Welcome to At Ease with Cooking. I'm Bonnie Kershke, your host. Once again, the holiday season is fast approaching, and we're all thinking about the foods and desserts that we're going to be preparing for those festive holiday dinners we'll be serving. Well, our program this evening is titled Fabulous Holiday Desserts Part 2. And we hope that we're going to be able to give you some ideas for some recipes for desserts that are maybe something that you've never prepared before. And we're going to begin with an authentic English holiday fruitcake. And here to prepare it for us is Gladys and Mike Meinz. Hi, Gladys and Mike.
Hi. Hi, Bonnie.
Great to have you here with us.
Thank you.
And you know, I've tasted your fruitcake. And I'm not kidding when I say it's the best that I've ever eaten.
Good.
And I used to make it myself, but this is much better than the recipe I had. And I believe that's because of all the wonderful ingredients that you have. Perhaps you could tell us about all of these wonderful things that you put into your fruitcake.
I'll start with the fruit, huh?
Okay.
There's a pound. We're going to make 3 fruitcakes.
All right.
And they weigh about 3 pounds each.
Okay.
And so we have a pound of green cherries, a pound of red cherries, 2 pounds of dates, a pound and a half of raisins, 1 pound of walnuts, half a pound of pecans.
Ooh.
That's the fruits.
Fruits, all right. And then we have some other ingredients over here.
Then the flour. Then we've got the rind of 2 oranges.
2 oranges, okay.
That goes in with the fruit.
Great.
Then the flour mixture. We have 3 cups of sifted flour. We have 1 teaspoon of nutmeg.
Okay.
2 teaspoons of baking powder.
Okay.
1 teaspoon of salt.
All right, there's our salt.
And 2 teaspoons of cinnamon.
Is that going to be flavorful?
And that gets mixed in with the flour.
All right, okay. Now, now that we have all these ingredients listed, what do we do with all of them?
Michael is going to take all the fruit and put it into the big bowl.
Okay.
And while he's doing that, I'm going to take the flour and put the spices in it.
All right.
The baking powder, the nutmeg, the cinnamon, and the salt. And this just needs to be stirred in a little bit because Michael's going to mix it so good anyway.
And that's handy to have Mike. And we should mention that Michael's your son, and I know that he's helped you a lot with the making of your fruit
He
cake.
stirs for me because it's too hard to stir when I make 8 of them at a time. So
yes.
he stirs for me. So that helps.
Now this is going to make 3 loaves, and
Yes.
and I know that during the holidays you make a lot of different recipes, batches of this. How many is the most that you ever prepared in one season?
One Christmas, before Christmas, I made 80 of them.
80?
80.
80? You must have been doing a lot of baking.
Bonnie, I was making fruitcakes in my sleep.
I can certainly believe it. And what a wonderful size bowl that you have there.
Yeah, I've had that many years. I got that from my neighbor. A neighbor of mine gave me that many years ago.
Now, when you're making 8 at a time, what size containers do you use? Do you?
Oh, you can get 8 out of this
bowl.
bowl.
You can get 8 from that bowl. Oh my.
Okay, I think it's time to add the flour.
Okay.
Now, when he's adding that flour, is there a reason to add it to the fruit?
Yeah, Michael's going to coat all the fruit now, otherwise your fruit will all sink to the bottom. So he has to be sure that all the fruit is coated well.
All right. Yes, and that does...
And it takes just a few minutes to do that. But it does take a man's or somebody with a lot of muscle to stir it.
Yes, when you're making that number of fruit cakes. Now, we have another batter over here. Perhaps you could tell us what's in...
Okay, this is what we call the wet ingredients. We start out with 8 eggs, 3/4 of a pound of butter, 1 1/4 cup of sugar, and you beat that all together.
All right.
Then we had 1/2 cup of molasses, 1/2 cup of plum jelly,
Plum jelly.
Plum jelly.
Now that's an interesting ingredient
Yeah, well, my daddy always used to put that in his fruitcake.
in his fruitcake. That's probably what makes it so extra special.
And then we've got the half cup of orange juice and half a cup of rum.
Ooh, that's going to have a nice
Then
flavor.
we beat all that up and just beat it up for like 5 minutes or so. Then just before you add it, you stir it and be sure it's all mixed up good together.
All right.
And then, are you ready, Michael?
Yes, I'm ready. Here we go.
Oh, it just smells wonderful.
That's the brandy you can smell.
Yes. Now
mean
that
the
is-
rum. This
now
is rum.
you can use brandy in this
Oh yeah,
too, can't you?
I make both rum and brandy fruitcakes, but this is the rum ones.
This is a rum one. Oh, we want to be sure we get all of that batter out of there.
Well, that's where the good part is. You know?
Well, and that's one of the reasons that this fruit cake is so wonderful, because it's mostly fruit and nuts. There isn't really much in the way of...
I never use citrus fruit.
You never use the citrus.
use citrus fruit.
Well,
I
other than
have
that
to
orange
wipe
peel.
my hands.
Yes, they were. All right, here's a towel for you. Now you have used this, it's a 9 by 5 by 3 loaf pan. And how have you prepared that
So
pan?
I've taken a little Crisco. I use shortening, any kind of shortening, on a paper towel, and just grease the pans a little. You don't have to grease it a lot, just a little.
All right.
Then I take wax paper and make 3 thicknesses of the wax paper.
All right.
Then you put it in your bread tin so that you come out with, it's kind of even on top.
And you have
But
some
this-
extending
Yeah,
over.
and I'll show you what we're going to do with that in a minute.
All right.
But if you don't put wax paper in, your fruit tends to, it has to cook so long and your fruit will tend to burn.
I see.
So we put the wax paper in. My father used to use brown paper.
Oh, yes.
Always use brown paper, but you can't get decent brown paper in this country because it's waxed on the one side that you buy in the store.
Yes.
And the bags are, that you get groceries in from the store, they're too thick.
Yes, and now they
So-
also have all that coloring
Yeah,
printing
so-
on it.
Wax paper works just as well, and Michael has to mix a little bit more.
Yes, I see where
Just
you do
about
need,
there. There's
Yeah, he's just
you
about
need,
there.
You need some muscles there to be able to do that.
If you think it's a little bit too dry, and that does look a little speck too dry to me, then you just add a wee drop more.
And now you have used the dark rum there.
Yeah. You can use your own judgment whether you think it's a little bit too dry or...
after a while the spoon gets a little slippery.
I believe it. Now, you mentioned your dad making the fruitcake. Did you used to help him when you were young?
Well, he'd let us cut up the fruit, the dates. We had to cut up the dates and the pecans, things like that. We never actually got our hands into it. He wouldn't let us do that.
he wouldn't let you
no.
do that, but he did let you. He did let you
He'd let
help
us
with it.
cut up the fruit and...
And what's more important, you got the
We got to watch
experience
him,
to
yeah.
know how to make it yourself.
I think we're just about ready.
Yeah, you're fine, Michael. That's good.
Okay.
You can put it in here and I'll spread it out. I just want to wipe the flour off the spoon.
Oh, that looks marvelous. Could you make that in a smaller pan if you
Oh, yes,
would
I
like?
do. I make them, for some of see, I always give my neighbours a fruit cake and then cookies, for Christmas. But I make them, their fruit cakes, because they're all widow ladies, and I make them in the little 1 pound loaf pans too.
Now, do you have to adjust the cooking time for that then, or is it pretty much take the same amount of time?
Well,
to-
this takes between 3 hours and 3.5 hours. And the other ones, the pound ones usually takes about 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours.
But
And-
you do the same with it. You stick a pick in it, and if it comes out clean, you want a little bit more there, Michael. You're not being very generous. See, this is not going to raise because it doesn't have the baking soda in.
Right.
Put a wee bit more of that in too, son.
Now, what temperature did you cook this
You
at?
bake this at 275.
275 for 3 to 3.5 hours.
That's good like that, Michael. Thank you. Thank you. Now you take your wax paper and you're going to come up like this over the top. Put your string underneath and then just tie it loosely over the top. And this is so your fruit doesn't dry out.
Dry out. Oh, yes.
Now what I do that we didn't put on the recipe, and I'm sorry about that, usually the last half hour of baking, I untie the string and take the paper and peel it back and rip it off, just so the top dries out.
All right.
And then
Okay,
it gets,
we can include
yes.
that on there. Wonderful.
But that's how you put it in the oven at 275 and bake it.
And bake it. And now you have some that you've already prepared here, and you're going to show us what you do with it
This-
after it's
yes.
baked and cooled.
Yes, you cool it. I usually let mine cool about half an hour before I take it out of the pan, out of this
All right.
pan. It's going to be very hot, and be very careful when you peel the wax paper off, because it does tend to stick to it.
All right.
Then I leave it cool, usually overnight. I cover it, I set it on the kitchen table on a piece of wax paper. I turn all the cakes on end like so, like this.
All right.
And then I cover them up with a couple of clean dish towels, go to bed and forget them till next morning. And then they're really good and cool, because it takes quite a while for that fruit. So then the next morning when I get up, I need a basin, a little basin to put some.
All right. Have a little
That little one, there's a little last one over
right there.
There's one. Okay. So we're going to put some rum in here. And you're going to take a piece of, what I use, I don't usually like cheesecloth because cheesecloth is too thin to wrap fruitcakes in. And these are the flour sack dish towels that have seen better days.
Okay.
And then you
Yes.
tear them in pieces. And then you take your rum and put it in a dish and kind of squeeze the most out of it, quite a bit out of it. You can leave it pretty damp, though.
Mm-hmm.
Then you put your aluminum foil, because you've already torn your aluminum foil. Put your brandy cloth or your rum cloth down, and then you're going to wrap your fruitcake in it.
Mm. And then you just...
Like so. And then I put mine in a bread wrapper besides this,
All right.
because otherwise that rum smell comes through and everything in the refrigerator. So it's potent, smelling.
And you do keep that in the refrigerator
Yes,
then?
and you can freeze these, these will keep for a couple of years.
Now, would you freeze it at this point?
Oh, yeah, you
and
can.
then, because I know you said that about every 3 weeks you have to sprinkle a little brandy or,
Yeah, well,
or
if
rum
you
on
see,
it.
you can. Usually, mine doesn't last that long that I can freeze it. But yes, if I would give you this fruitcake today to take home, and you weren't going to eat it till Christmas, and you were going to keep it in the refrigerator, well, say Thanksgiving time, you would take it out and you'd soak your cloth again, and then wrap it up again and put it back in.
I see.
That way, it stays nice and
So
moist.
every
and
2 to 3 weeks about.
If it's in the refrigerator. If it's in the
Yeah.
freezer, you don't have to
You
take
don't
it
have
out
to
and
do that, no,
Okay.
no.
Oh. Well, why don't we...
So we're going to put the cake.
I can't explain how wonderful that smells. It just is, and it's so wonderful to eat too. It's just absolutely marvelous. Lives up to our show's title, fabulous. It's a fabulous holiday fruitcake. And gee, Gladys and Mike, I want to thank you so much for sharing your family recipe with us. We really appreciate it.
Very
Thanks for having
welcome.
us, Bonnie.
Thanks
Thank you.
again. And coming up next, we have Elizabeth Frank, who's going to be preparing Kay's cake. Welcome, Elizabeth. It's great to have you back with us
Thank you.
again.
Thank you very
And
much.
this cake sounds marvelous. What are the ingredients for it?
Well, I call it Kay's cake because it's from one of my favorite daughter-in-laws, and so that I'll have to tell you what Kay's ingredients are.
Okay.
And first we have either a yellow or a white cake mix. It doesn't matter. And then you have, I think I've got this a little mixed up here, but we have 4 whole eggs. Doesn't make any difference, but it has to be a cake mix without pudding. Be sure that you make a point of that. And then you have the smaller packages, they're 3 3/8 ounces each, of pistachio pudding. Some of them have nuts in and some don't, but the nuts, there aren't that many in there. Believe me, you can't count on them for the entire product. And then 3/4 of a cup of oil. I'd like to just mention at this point, because there's so much talk about whether a thing has cholesterol or not. You'll find most of the vegetable oils will say in loud, large letters that it has no cholesterol. Well, the truth of the matter is that any vegetable oil does not have cholesterol in it. That's like saying water doesn't have cholesterol. But what you should do is become a label reader, because that could have very, very much of saturated fats in it. And those are particularly the coconut and the palm oil, and those are the worst ones, as you know.
yes.
So that to say that it has no cholesterol means absolutely nothing. The only products that do have cholesterol in are animal products and your dairy products, you know,
Right.
your eggs and so forth, so that people seem to get confused about that. And then this is a cup of club soda. Now, because some of you might not find a use for, say you buy a big bottle of club soda and you want to do something with it, you can either use the rest for putting some fruit juice in it and using it as a, beverage, or you can substitute ginger ale, and it works absolutely just as
well.
Yeah. So then you can drink it with juice or without, and I have found that at Christmas time I like to use it in a Jell-O instead of part of the liquid. In other words, you use ginger ale as part of the liquid.
Oh, that would be
You use the
good.
hot water to melt the Jell-O or to dissolve it, and then you finish up with the ginger ale, and then you can grind up or blend cranberries and put your sugar in and a little orange peel or nuts or whatever you want. It makes a really nice Christmas
that does
Jell-O.
sound delicious.
Right. And then what you want to take these ingredients, and the 4 eggs, of course, and then we take those ingredients and just beat them together for about 3 minutes. Then you incorporate both, in other words, blend in, the blending motion. Okay, like with the cherries and the nuts. These happen to be walnuts because, no, pecans. These are pecans because that's your favorite.
Right.
You can use walnuts. You can use any of your choice. I think I'd pick almonds because that happens to
your
be my
favorite.
Yeah, right. But that isn't any particular
And
difference.
how many pecans were there?
Those are a cup to a cup and a half, and these are a cup of the drained maraschino cherries. And I thought maybe you gals or whoever's watching out there would like to know what a maraschino cherry is. So I looked it up in Webster's dictionary, and I shall read to you what it says.
Okay.
A maraschino is usually a large cherry preserved in true or imitation maraschino. And maraschino is a sweet liqueur distilled from the fermented juice of a bitter wild cherry. Now you know.
Ah, well, that's
But, yeah,
interesting.
well, right, because I absolutely, until I looked it up myself, I didn't know how they preserve these. So
Right.
yes. And then you bake this you fold in the nuts and the cherries, and then you bake it about an hour in a bundt pan. And you can grease that in any manner that you want. I know different people that have made this particular cake, and you can use, because of the ridges and so forth on the bundt pan, sometimes it's easier to use one of the sprays
I see.
that gets in. But otherwise, if you're careful, just grease it, flour it if you want to, because you want this cake to come out in one piece.
Yes.
Right. And this particular cake, when my daughter-in-law would come into any party event that we were having, the word got around very quickly, and people would make an excuse to detour to the kitchen to be sure they got a piece of it. That is really true, too.
Before you
Very good.
ever even had dinner,
That's
the dessert
right,
was
that's
gone.
right. We never bothered about details like that. But it's a real different cake, and it keeps very well. But after you've baked it, you can take it out and let it sit in this position, right in the bundt pan for about 25 minutes, starting to cool. And then you can put it out. See, some of the steam raises and, creates a little steam there so that the cake loosens. And then you
more
put it
easily.
on a cake rack and then cool it completely before you do any frosting.
Well, great. And then you do have a glaze that you're going to put on this.
This
don't you?
cake, yes, you can have a glaze or you can leave it plain because it really is. It's such a nice cake and it stands by itself. But if you want to use the glaze, just to show you, you could use 2 cups of sifted powdered sugar and a tablespoon of the soft butter and vanilla, or I like to mix vanilla and almond. I like
Vanilla
the mixture of the two, but again, that's an individual thing. And about 3 tablespoons of milk. And of course, what happens with the milk is that you want to know whether your glaze is to be poured on and run down and kind of set itself, and you will have to be kind of a judge of that, you know.
Yes.
When you, depending how you
So
want
it's
the
not
cake.
too stiff
Yeah,
or not-
right.
or not-
If you want to
yes.
dribble down and not dribble all around the cake. And then you can use your own particular decoration. Now we have here the halves almonds, and we have chopped almonds, and then the drained maraschino cherries. And I think if you even towel them a little bit dry, even after they're drained, because sometimes the red juice might make the
Oh, yes.
frosting look just a little bit,
Right.
yeah. And in order to give an alternative to that particular method, I did use today to show you. This happens to be prepared commercial mix. You could use any type that you want to. And I put a little bit of extra flavoring in it, and just a little bit of water. You have to go by a few drops and stir it to see. Now you can tell we were testing it here. Now this, if you can see, I'm catching it there. It's not exactly runny, but it'll kind of stay where it's put.
Right, right.
And so, do you have the rubber spatula there?
Right,
So-
here we go.
Okay. The reason we made a choice of having both cut-up nuts and whole ones, these are really, really nice to have, and they look, you know, very kind of special. However, you do have to place them individually, and if you're in a hurry, this is a faster method.
Faster way, yes.
And I almost might say that we don't reserve this just for Christmas, because if it's Easter or whatever, you can use miniature bunnies, you can use jelly beans, little rabbits made out of marshmallows or whatever. I mean, you
sure.
know, so that you can make it special for the occasion.
Oh,
Now
yes,
again,
that's
yeah.
wonderful.
What do you think about
idea.
this texture here? Do you
Yeah,
think?
I think that's working quite well.
Yeah. I will say one thing, again, as long as people are becoming very conscious of the saturated fat contents of food and also of and/or cholesterol, that the contents on this particular package, this particular container, had several what I would call not good sources of. Now, do you want that spread down
Oh, I
a little
think
bit
that
more?
you're
Is
doing
that okay?
just a beautiful job
Okay.
there.
Okay. You can get to lick this later.
I get to lick it off.
Okay, well, I think that I'm going to use these just
Sure.
in the interest of time.
Great, great.
And I hope that it's a consistency so they'll stick.
Well, this is going to be so attractive at a holiday
Yeah.
dinner because of those beautiful stemmed cherries that you're going to put on there. And,
Yeah.
and when we cut into that cake a little bit later, they're going to see what a beautiful color it is and what a Christmassy color
That's
it is.
right. You know, you could, when we put the cherries on, you could, if you wanted to really, gild the lily, what you would do is buy some of those little kind of mint jelly candies, and they can get like little green leaves or a jelly candy and cut them into whatever shape you want it to, and then that would give the red and the green.
Yes,
rather-
that would be very
But
attractive.
I think I like these with the stems on, and I usually try to put one going one way and one going the other way so that it kind of just gives a, which way? Yeah, that's right,
There-
it goes this way.
Well, adding those toppings and that glaze there makes a delicious cake a fabulous
Right.
cake.
This is really something different.
Yes.
Really something different.
Oh,
Once anybody tastes it, they always want the recipe, so Kay's Cake is getting very famous, even up into Canada.
great.
Right. I have a friend in Canada that requested this recipe and use it even in the boardroom for the bankers and stuff, so.
Well,
yeah.
wonderful.
So, how's that look?
Looks absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much, Elizabeth,
You're
for
welcome.
sharing your daughter-in-law's recipe with
You're
us.
welcome.
And we'll be back with a raspberry parfait that I'm going to be preparing for you.
A raspberry parfait looks really very elegant, but is really very, very simple, and can even be made ahead of time and kept stored in the refrigerator, or I mean your freezer. Now, we're going to be using some parfait glasses here, and I have 2 different sizes. Now, if you don't happen to have a parfait glass, you can use some other glasses instead. A water goblet will work well, a wine glass will work, and so will, I believe this is a whiskey sour glass here. But I'm going to be using this smaller size Parfait glass. And really all that a Parfait is this particular one, as I've taken the whole raspberries that are frozen, and I've put them in a bowl with a little bit of sugar and a little bit of water, so I get a nice syrup here. And then we're going to use some ice cream, and we're going to use some whipping cream as a topping, and one of the whole raspberries for the top as a garnish, and with some sliced almonds. As I said, it's really very simple to make, and you start by putting a layer of the raspberries and their juice in the bottom of your Parfait glass, and then you take some of your ice cream, put it on top, and you just continue to make those layers there until you have filled the entire Parfait glass. I think we'll probably have about 3 layers here. More ice cream. As you can see, it really is very, very easy to do, and can be made very quickly when you haven't had a lot of time to spend working on a dessert. One more layer, I think. More ice cream. And press down just a little bit, and you'll find that that raspberry juice comes up very nice on the side of the glass. Some more raspberries. Top it with a dollop of whipping cream. One of our whole raspberries. And lastly, we'll take some of those sliced almonds and just place them in an attractive way along the top of your Parfait. Now what we're going to do is serve a few little Christmas cookies with that, and voila, there you've got a really fabulous dessert for your guests. Now, if you would like a copy of this evening's recipes, if you'll send us a self-addressed, stamped business-size envelope, and please be sure to include the title of this show, which is Fabulous Holiday Desserts Part 2, we'll be happy to get those recipes to you. We're back with all our fabulous holiday desserts. We've got our authentic English holiday fruitcake, we have Kay's cake, and we've got our raspberry parfait. I'd like to thank you all so much again for sharing your recipes with us. We really do appreciate it. Thanks so much.
It was fun.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you too for watching. And we hope you'll tune us in again next time for At Ease with Cooking. Happy holidays!